The House of Commons resumed Monday from its summer break, and for the first time since becoming Prime Minister, Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre went to bat, taking jabs at each other. And here with more details about that is political commentator and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley. Brian, welcome back. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Brian, Monday was the first day of Parliament's fall session, and the first time Poilievre faces off against Carney in question period. So how did it go?
Well, let me put this in context for you. Yesterday was the 258th day of 2025. Parliament had only sat, or the House of Commons, for 20 days. Yesterday was the 21st day. Out of 258 days, 21 days. That's crazy. They met for 20 days at the end of May, early June, and then took an 87-day break, and they came back. So Poilievre, I thought he opened it up with grace and a bit of humor, a bit of self-deprecating humor. He stood up to start question period, and he said, "My mother taught me never to be late, so I apologize for being tardy for this session of Parliament. I had some important meetings in Alberta,
goodness.
and the good people of Battle River Crowfoot have elected me." Everyone had a good laugh.
Yeah.
He went on to ask Mark Carney questions. Carney at one point referred to Poilievre as a minister and then joked that, "Oh, well, I just gave you a promotion. Come on over." So, it was a bit good-natured on the first day. Everyone was talking ahead of time about how tone has to change. I think overall, tone did change. The Conservatives are clearly going to be using a tactic where they try and hold Mark Carney to account using his own words, using the promises and the expectations that he has set for himself, because that's what they were doing time and again in question period on Monday. So it's an interesting take because you're still holding the government to account. You're not being overly combative, but you're saying, well, you promised this. You're either you haven't delivered or you've delivered something else. How do you explain yourself? That's the opposition's job. So no one can say they're being overly critical or too harsh. They're doing their job.
Yeah. So they took jabs at each other, but would you say it was like good-natured, more comical jabs?
Yeah.
For that first
Yeah.
session?
It was not a nasty performance from either one. Whereas when Justin Trudeau was there and Pierre Poilievre was the opposition leader, it was nasty from both of them. I mean, a lot of people would just point to Pierre Poilievre as being nasty. Well, Justin Trudeau was incredibly arrogant, dismissive, rude, and aggressive to the opposition. Carney, both in the spring session when Poilievre wasn't there and yesterday, trying to make it good-natured. Carney wasn't in question period today. He's got other meetings, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But he's taking a very different tone. Will that last for either of them? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Now, a couple of minutes ago there, Brian, you mentioned that the Conservatives want to use Carney's own words against him as they hold him to account. And last week, he unveiled his major projects list, and you wrote that it didn't live up to Carney's promise and that it is weak. So why do you say that?
Because it doesn't live up to Mark Carney's promise and it's weak. So let me explain that. Sorry for being silly.
Qualify.
Look, he said that we need to think big, act bigger, and build at speeds not seen in generations. That's what he said on election night. That was a theme throughout his campaign in the election, and it was a theme throughout his leadership campaign. So he'd been saying that for months, and he continued to say it. Between April and last Friday, he said that or variations of it time and again. And then he unveils the 5 major projects on it. Well, first off, there's no oil pipeline. Secondly, for Ontario, there's no Ring of Fire, which is the critical minerals and mining deposits in Ontario's north that the feds have been fighting the Ford government on for years. And the 5 projects are already in the pipe in one form or another. The copper mine in Saskatchewan is going to be complete next year. It is well progressed. So that's not exactly thinking big, acting bigger, and moving at speeds not seen in generations. Those are tepid, small baby steps. And I support all of these projects going forward, by the way. I absolutely think these should go forward, but so should others. And now they're saying, well, there'll be more projects by Grey Cup Sunday, and then more projects by the Stanley Cup Finals, and then more projects by the time the World Cup comes to Canada next June.
Oh boy.
All right, a lot of sports, dates thrown in there. I
Yeah.
think they're trying to appeal to men, knowing
You
that the
left
Liberals
out
have.
Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, other than the World Cup, which is coming to Canada, they're
Yeah.
using very Canadian
Got it. Yeah.
reference point. But I feels like they're trying to pitch to men who the Liberals have had trouble with over the last number of years. Not so much in this last election, but previously. So they're trying to keep men on side with the sports. But look, we should be doing more. We should be doing bigger. I want Mark Carney to live up to his words of think big, act bigger, move at speeds not seen in generations. That's what we need to do to unleash the Canadian economy to compete with the American economy. So, because as I've said, since January, we get rid of all the tariffs tomorrow. Donald Trump is still going to leave us in the dust with what he's doing to unleash the American economy. We need to do the same. We can't keep shackling ourselves and wondering why our economic growth is pathetic, which it still is pathetic. Hopefully, these projects change it, but I think we need more still. And by the way, uh, I got a 9-page memo sent to me from all the top industry leaders in oil and gas. It was a letter sent to Mark Carney saying, we wrote to you 6 months ago. We told you what we need to do. We don't think it's happening. And here, let us remind you, we want to work with you. Here's what we need to do. Here's how we can help you. Let's work together.
You mentioned Trump and tariffs, and before we started this interview, you had mentioned that Carney, during the House of Commons, mentioned that he and Trump text. So did he go into detail a little bit about what they are talking about, or if there's going to be an end to any of this craziness?
This was an exchange between Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet and Carney. And Blanchet was trying to say, well, you said you'd negotiate a deal with them and you didn't. And when was the last time you were in Washington? And when are you going to see him next? And Carney said, well, I don't need to go to Washington. The president of the United States is a modern man. And we exchange text messages all the time. And he also said that we've got the best deal with the United States. Remember back to the election campaign? He said, even on election night after he won, he said, Donald Trump wants to break us so that America can own us. And we got the same tariffs that Trump was talking about back then. And now it's the best deal in the world. I mean, and he's talking to Trump all the time. I thought he was trying to break us so he could own us. The elbows are definitely down. We can't find the elbows. They're not going up and down anymore. They're just down. And Trump and Carney are besties. He said, sure, we have some disagreements, but this is, we've got the best deal in the world. What a difference a few months makes.
Definitely. Brian, earlier this year after being sworn in, Carney said that voters will hold him to account based on their experience at the grocery store. That's a quote the Conservatives seized upon on Monday as the House of Commons resumed. And then this morning, fresh numbers from Stats Canada showing grocery prices are higher still. So how bad is this? What does it mean for Carney?
Well, it's really bad because, we can look at everything else that the consumer price index measures, and that's the inflation number, and it's at 1.9%. That's a very good inflation number. We'd like it to be, I guess, zero if you don't want prices to go up ever, and who wants to pay more? None of us do. But, you don't have to buy a lot of things that are on the consumer price index, but we all have to buy food. We all have to eat. And food inflation is at 3.4%. Food inflation measures both products bought from restaurants and from grocery stores. Just products bought from grocery stores, it's increased 3.5% in August from the year previous. And remember, all of these are built upon increasing grocery prices over the last several years, so it's compounded. So overall grocery prices are up 3.5% in August, but meat was up 7.2%. Beef, and not just steak, but ground beef as well. The cheaper cut, it's up 12.7%. So, all right, you put the steak back because you're looking at it and go, well, I used to pay a lot less for that. I can't justify that, can't afford it. I'll go for ground beef. Holy man.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Look at the price of ground beef now. So all of these prices are going up. Sylvain Charlebois, the food professor, dug into some of the numbers, and things like coffee were up 20%. But you know what? That was a self-inflicted wound because we put countervailing tariffs on coffee imports. The Americans tariffed our steel, our aluminum, our auto, our copper, and we said, oh, well, we'll get you back. We'll tariff all that and we'll tariff coffee. Well, we import all of our coffee. There's nowhere that coffee is grown in Canada. It's not actually grown in the continental United States either, but some of it's roasted there. We're importing that, and that was pushing up our coffee prices. Those tariffs went away September 1st, so maybe you'll see a bit of a break on coffee prices over the next month or so. But I've been watching it, and yeah, I've got a few brands that I go back and forth with over which coffee beans I buy, and the sales have not been as good the past several months. Let's put it that way, Jeanette.
Yeah. Hopefully the Starbucks will come down. If anything, it's going up. Brian, on a bit of a sombering note here, so there was a statement read out in the House in defense of free speech, and honoring American conservative activist Charlie Kirk. So were you surprised that Liberals joined in a standing ovation when Lethbridge Conservative MP Rachel Thomas finished her statement?
A little bit. And, I shouldn't be surprised, but because of some of the rhetoric around Charlie Kirk, a lot of it, false statements of things that, oh, well, he said this, so he was hateful. He said that, he's a racist, a misogynist, et cetera, et cetera. Pretty much all false statements are taken completely out of context to make them look, put them in the worst possible light. So it was good to see the Liberals stand up and defend free speech. They haven't always done that. But there is a different guy at the top, a different tone, and freedom of speech is central to Canada. I've been having this debate, believe it or not, close to 20 years, with certain types of Liberals telling me that we don't have freedom of speech in Canada. I said, yes, we do. It's guaranteed in the Charter. And they say, no, we have freedom of expression. I said, well, you know that they chose that because that encompasses speech and several other forms of communication. It's actually a bit broader, and you don't have to interpret it as being broader. But there are some people that in this country that don't believe we should have freedom of speech. And it was good to see so many of our elected representatives standing up. Couldn't tell if the Bloc and the NDP stood up. I could only go with the view that I had on my screen from the TV cameras inside the House. But the front bench of the Liberal Party jumped up and joined in the standing ovation after Ms. Thomas finished speaking.
No, that's wonderful. Brian, there's chatter that former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is leaving her job as Transportation Minister and taking up a diplomatic post. Is this surprising?
No, because she's been trying to get out of government for a while, going back to when Justin Trudeau was still here. She wanted a diplomatic post. Not sure why it didn't happen under Trudeau. Then, of course, they had their falling out. Mark Carney is now appointing her a special envoy on Ukraine, so something very near and dear to her heart, something that she has done good work on. So she'll leave soon. There'll be a by-election in Toronto-Rosedale, and another Liberal will be reelected.
Oh, interesting. Brian Lilley, Toronto Sun columnist, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.